This is not a story about Baby P. That was a name the media gave him. A title, a symbol, a shortcut. But this isn't about symbols. This is about Peter. Just Peter. And how a little boy from the United Kingdom became the face of one of the worst child protection failures in British history. Before the headlines. Before the courtrooms, the outrage, and the resignations. There was just a little boy named Peter. A child with warm brown eyes, a soft giggle, and a desperate need for love. In the heart of Haringey, North London, in a quiet flat tucked behind brick walls, Peter Connolly existed. Not as a case. Not as a cause. But as a child. And like so many others who live in the margins of crisis, he was seen, yet never truly saved. Before we begin, if you believe real stories, especially those the world tries to forget, deserve to be told with care and truth, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we don't just report crime, we remember the victims. Now let's head back to the story. Peter's beginning. Peter Connolly was born on March 1st, 2006, in Haringey, North London, United Kingdom. A healthy baby, weighing 7 pounds at birth, with chubby cheeks, and that kind of soft, alert stare only infants have. His mother, Tracy Connolly, was reportedly thrilled to have him. In hospital photos, she smiled, tired, proud, like any new mom. But smiles, as we'll come to see in this story, are deceiving. They hide what's waiting beneath. Peter had 2 half-siblings. He lived in a council flat, tight quarters, familiar to many London families. His early checkups were mostly fine. A bit of colic. Nothing alarming. He was growing, gaining weight, rolling over by 3 months. Smiling often. There was no storm on the horizon. Not yet. The early shadows. Around the 6-month mark, things shifted subtly. A few missed health visitor appointments. A late vaccination. Nothing immediately serious, but in hindsight, these were small cracks. At the time, North London was saturated with understaffed child protection services. Haringey Council's social care department had already been flagged in earlier years following the horrific Victoria Climby case, also in Haringey, another child, another failure. But reforms were slow. Turnover was high. Cases stacked faster than staff could handle. So when Peter's name began to surface, once, then again, it was just one of many on an overwhelmed desk. Behind closed doors. The flat on Penshurst Road was ordinary from the outside. Brick facade, iron gate, a place no one would suspect housed a growing pattern of neglect. Peter's mother had begun a relationship with Stephen Barker, a man with a dangerous record and disturbing tendencies. He moved in with Tracy. Then came Jason Owen, Stephen's brother or close relative, depending on the report. Another man with a history. Another man inside a small space with a vulnerable child. 3 adults. 1 toddler. No protection. The neighbors heard arguments, sometimes loud banging. But in many British flats, noise is just a part of living. Few raised alarms. Few felt it was their place. Peter was still seen during this period. By doctors, social workers, health visitors. He was examined over 60 times in his short life by medical professionals. 60. And yet, one recorded visit said Peter had a scratch on his face. Another noted a bruise on his shoulder. One file states, mother says child hit himself with toy. No further concern at this time. At one point, a pediatrician photographed injuries on his back and referred the case for further action. But paperwork was slow. The review panel stalled. Staff turnover meant fresh eyes were constantly starting over. Peter was still smiling. At least, publicly. He smiled when workers entered the flat. One nurse later said, he looked at me like he was trying to tell me something. But he never cried. And that, perhaps, is the most haunting part. Peter didn't scream. He didn't fight back. Like many abused children, he adjusted to fear as normal. It became routine. By his 8th month, the case had now been seen by the police, multiple doctors, social workers, and child protection officers. Meetings were held. Plans were discussed. But somehow, despite dozens of warning signs, Peter was allowed to remain in that flat, with his mother and her violent partner. He was no longer Peter. He was just the child on a printed report. You see, when systems break, they don't break all at once. They unravel slowly, through delayed follow-ups, assumptions, missed communications, and fear of overstepping. One email said, we don't want to escalate this unless necessary. Let's give Tracy some space to parent. It was England, 2007. A child was being tortured, but bureaucracy demanded patience. What was lost? We don't know Peter's favorite color. We don't know if he preferred cars or animals. We don't know his first word. Those things weren't documented. What was documented were bruises, cuts, missing fingernails. But those details, those come later. Right now, in this chapter, we remember Peter as someone before the crime. He was not born broken. He was born into a system that failed him. His name is Peter Connolly, not Baby P. He lived 17 months in North London. And somehow, in a city with 8 million people, not one person stopped what was coming. You've heard his name in headlines. You've heard the verdicts. But you haven't heard the full story, not like this. Not piece by piece. Not how it really happened. Stay with me. Because next, we'll meet the 3 adults who made Peter's life a daily prison. And ask, how does evil survive in plain sight? We left Peter in a place of silence, despite dozens of missed warnings. Now, meet the 3 adults responsible for what he faced every day behind closed doors. In a council flat on Penshurst Road, Haringey, London, 3 people. His mother, her boyfriend, and a lodger conspired, not to care for a toddler, but to imprison him. This isn't just neglect. It's cruelty dressed up as routine. Tracy Connolly, the mother. Tracy, young, broke, and weighed down by her own unresolved trauma, became Peter's primary protector. On paper. In reality, Peter's jailer. North London friends described her as inconsistent. One day loving, the next not. She gave interviews after Peter's death, insisting she did her best. We tried for him. I loved him. But evidence painted a darker picture, an unwillingness to fight for him, to seek help, or to push back against her boyfriend's growing rage. Her emotional state? A charged mix of shame and avoidance. She would isolate Peter in his room, deny him basic care, allow the bruise-explaining explanations to stand unchallenged. In Haringey's borough, where social services tracked families, Tracy wasn't an anomaly, just another overwhelmed case. Stephen Barker, the boyfriend. Enter Stephen Barker, a volatile man in his 20s with a history of violence. He moved in when Peter was still under 1 year old. Neighbors recalled him shouting at Tracy. Others said he boasted about his strength. He was a known source of fear in that flat. Audio transcripts from interviews show his disdain for Peter. He's just a kid, he sneered. He blamed every noise on Peter misbehaving, dismissing visible injuries as accidents, though the explanation never matched the wounds. He installed a twisted power dynamic. Any cry, any whimper, met with intimidation. Some former friends recalled Barker's anger escalating when Peter cried, a toddler's normal reaction, now construed as defiance. Jason Owen, the lodger. Then there was Jason Owen, the man who quietly became guard, enforcer, and co-conspirator. Less physically violent than Barker, but no less cruel. Reports say he would whisper in Peter's ears to shush him, or else. He would gleam at Peter's fears, asserting dominance without lifting a hand. A social worker's note read, Jason often present during visits. Unsettling atmosphere. Yet he stayed. Haringey's housing department didn't check his status. Neighbors never asked. No red flags were raised. In this trio, power and blame were shared. When Peter cried, it was Tracy's lack of intervention, Barker's aggression, and Jason's silent approval that combined to form his cage. If you find value in this kind of content, please consider subscribing and helping this channel reach 2,000 subscribers. Every single one counts, and your support truly helps keep these stories alive. How they operated. This wasn't a one-off incident. It was a long, slow orchestration of abuse. 1. Physical isolation. Peter spent long hours alone in his toddler bedroom. His pleas unheard. 2. Emotional manipulation. Tracy often told social workers he just needed time, while Barker and Owen reinforced the message that Peter was a troublemaker. 3. Collective denial. When doctors requested extra visits, the 3 blocked access. Doors were locked. Appointments missed. 4. Covering tracks. They blamed bruises on Peter himself. Rocking crib. Toy mishaps. No one contradicted this. 5. Enemy creation. They taught Peter fear. Fear of Barker's return. Fear of social workers. Fear of silence as safety. This council flat in Haringey, North London, wasn't abandoned. It hummed with daily living. Windows lit at night. Neighbors saw Barker carrying groceries, Tracy taking the bin out. Routine. Behind those routines, a pattern built day by day. While the city slept or argued about care budgets, a toddler stayed trapped in a private hell. Stop and think. 3 adults, 1 small body. Not strangers in dark alleys. They're in your living room. Now ask, how could anyone believe it possible to hide that kind of cruelty? That question, it burns. And it's what we'll explore next. How the system stood by. Controversy and debate hooks. Why didn't neighbors act? Londoners often value privacy. Did routine living create normalization? Should social workers be seen as saviors? Or just bureaucrats with too much trust? Is it fair to treat Tracy as victim or villain? She loved him or she didn't? Where do we draw the line? Expect strong reactions. Some will defend anonymity and privacy. Others will demand harsher judgments. In the months before Peter died, dozens of professionals crossed his path in Haringey, North London. Doctors, nurses, police, social workers, all with a duty to protect. Each one saw something. Yet, none did enough. This is the story of how repeated chances to save a child were ignored. Timeline of neglect. From May to July 2006, Peter's health records show a series of concerning notes. May 2006. Health visitor notes a scratch on his cheek. The file states, mother reports he scratched himself. No further action. June 2006. Pediatric ward visit, notes a small bruise on his shoulder. A doctor photographed it but marked no referral. Admitted for mild fever. Bruise noted. Mother says result of fall. July 2006. Nurse records multiple small bruises. A referral for a child protection conference is logged, but never scheduled. We see powerful contradictions. Staff flag concerns, but paperwork vanishes, case reviews stall, and referrals slip into limbo. Doctors observe, but steps stall. A pediatrician noted bruising on multiple occasions. The pattern could suggest non-accidental injury. Yet internal memos show hesitation. Needs a review, but resources are scarce. One email from the pediatric department read, we flagged it. Now wait for Haringey's response. Weeks passed. Unanswered. Social service records show 3 different case workers assigned to Peter's file within months. Reasons: overtime, burnout, transfers. The most damning passage. Case shows some concern, but mother denies abuse. No new assessment. Despite guidelines to act aggressively on repeat bruises in toddlers, none did. At one point, a supervisory email stated, let's give her more space. Space, in this case, meant more suffering. The Metropolitan Police made 2 unannounced visits after calls from pediatricians. First visit, Peter played quietly in the flat. Officers found no signs of distress, took no action. Second visit, Barker answered the door. Officers noted a bruise, again dismissed due to Tracy's explanations. No arrests. No investigation. Just paperwork filed. Another referral lost in bureaucracy. Here's where it gets controversial. 1. Health visitors raising flags, but no one following through. 2. Pediatricians noting bruises, but relying on social services. 3. Social workers waiting for police input, or assuming police would act. 4. The police observing, but deferring to medical authority. A 1998 child protection manual from the University of Manchester, UK, emphasizes that any professional seeing multiple injuries in a toddler must escalate immediately. That didn't happen here. Imagine the tension mounting. A toddler seen by dozens. Teachers and doctors could have saved him, but only if they spoke up, and if someone listened. This slow cascade, assumption, delay, deferral, was all it took. Debate and controversy hooks. Workforce burnout. Underfunded UK social services, how realistic expectations contributed to failure. Fear versus duty, professional caution prioritized paperwork over a life. Cultural blindness. Haringey was labeled an unsafe borough after the Quimby case. Yet nothing changed. Peter walked through appointments, checkups, conversations. Every visit was a chance. Every failure, a brick in his prison. That's why we call this missed warnings. Because if even one adult had acted, just once, the rest of this story would never unfold. Now, step inside Peter's world. Not as cold case files or headlines, but as a toddler who woke each day hoping things would change and found only darkness. This is his final weeks. His silent pain. 1. A body in distress. Peter was around 15 months old when the abuse escalated. Hospital records from August 2007 note. Several fresh bruises on his back, hips, and thighs, different ages. Finger marks and a torn earlobe. Visible malnourishment. But these are not numbers, we must see him. Small ribs jutting under thin pajamas. Lethargy instead of laughter. The fatigue of a child who has cried himself into stillness. 2. Fear in the everyday. Imagine, it's a midweek morning in Haringey, and Peter wakes up. He reaches for a toy, but Barker is near. He flinches. He stops. He doesn't smile. Not anymore. Peter began eating less. His appetite gone. Lunch is left untouched at nursery. Teachers flagged it, but were told, he's teething. In every scene, mornings, midday, nights, his fear became routine. 3. Confusion and isolation. He no longer explored the flat. He hovered in corners, rubber toy in hand. He trembled when strangers entered, even gently. A visiting nurse from Great Ormond Street Hospital noted. He shrank back when I knelt beside him. His eyes held questions no child should ask. In records, the note ends there. No follow-up. No demand for change. Just quiet. 4. A toddler's final days. In September 2007, 2 weeks before his death, he lost weight visibly, dropping below the 5th percentile. Dry skin, split lips, deep bruises. A doctor wrote. Lethargic, listless, refusing comfort. Even a child's instincts vanished. Comfort once found in hugs gone. One night, his mother and the two men argued. Peter lay in his cot, eyes wide, listening, his little body still trembling. That became nearly every night. 5. The emotional climax. No scream. No cry. Just silence. In the flat, he lay still. No one saw him. A final bruise. A final moment of abandonment. The silence between these walls carried more weight than any violence could. Spark for debate. Is emotional neglect as damaging as physical harm? Did fear teach Peter to stop asking for love? How do we define a crime of silence? Arguments will come. Some say emotional neglect can be invisible, yet lethal. Dig deep, and you see, this isn't a distant horror. It happened in North London, near local parks, buses, schools, places millions know. It was not remote. It was not rare. It was in one of the world's richest cities. In those final weeks, Peter wasn't just bruised, he was broken, piece by piece. And no one fixed him. Next, we'll walk the day he died, every moment of that tragic end. Stay with me. They say the final day of a life often passes unnoticed. But this day, it left echoes. In this chapter, we walk step by step through Peter's last hours, not to shock, but to understand where every chance to save him slipped away. Morning, the quiet routine, 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's early morning in Haringey, North London. Dawn creeps into the flat on Penshurst Road. Peter's body, frail and silent, lies still in his cot. Tracy enters, checks him, notes he's quiet. No fuss. No tears. She speaks to Stephen Barker briefly. He's sleeping. No alarm. No hurry. Peter's last breakfast is prepared, watery milk. He sips, lethargic. He's still alive. Still a child. Still human. Mid-morning, the final checkup, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. A health visitor arrives unannounced. She knocks, shakes the door, enters, sees Tracy, and glimpses Peter in his cot. Peter's eyelids flicker open briefly. He makes no sound. The nurse asks, "How long has he been this quiet?" Tracy shrugs. "He's just tired." The nurse notes his thinness, but is called away by a hospital alert. No referral is made. In England's public health records, this is logged, but flagged later as insufficient proof. Another chance passes. Afternoon, the emergency call, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Peter's breathing noticeably shallow. Barker, returning from work, checks on him. He coaxes Peter to drink more milk. Nothing. Tracy calls a neighbor. He's not right. But there's no hospital visit. Instead, Tracy texts Barker. He's just weak. By 3:45 p.m., Tracy dials 999. Barker answers calmly. He's unresponsive. Paramedics arrive. In London ambulance service records. Subject pale, heart rate low. No response. They rush him out, Peter leaving that flat one last time. Alive, but barely. Evening, confirmation and chaos, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. At the hospital, doctors work to revive him. They declare. Subject in multi-system failure. Signs of long-standing trauma. Peter is placed on life support. In the UK's hospital chapels, prayer candles flicker. Some faith left for a child no one protected. The medical lead reflects later. He should have been here days ago. Night. A life lost, 8 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. Peter's parents are called. Tracy holds her son. Barker stands silent in the corridor. They hear the words that confirm his death. No drama, just a child gone from Haringey, England. Final reflections. In 24 hours, we saw 5 opportunities: morning, checkup, midday, emergency call, and hospital confirmation. 5 chances to act. 5 moments for courage. But fear, inertia, and paperwork filled the room instead. Controversy and debate. Should the 999 call have come sooner? Critics argue a delayed emergency call sealed his fate. Hospital ethics versus home visits. The health visitor left too soon, but was she under pressure to manage time? Is death the only way the system noticed? He died before anyone lived for him. Peter's heart stopped on that autumn evening, but his story didn't. Next, we'll look at how the people of England responded. Outcry, resignations, and a nation shocked by the price of missed chances. Peter Connolly's death wasn't just shocking, it became a fault line in England's public conscience. Across the UK, there was a sudden, fierce realization: a little boy from Haringey had been unseen. Today, we explore the national response: heartbreak, outrage, finger-pointing, and the system scrambling to explain itself. Media storm. Within 24 hours, tabloids splashed Baby P across front pages nationwide. The Express, The Sun, the Daily Mail portraying him as a national tragedy. Opinion pieces were scathing. How many more Peters before we act? BBC and Guardian balanced horror with analysis, highlighting policy failures. Viewership soared. Everywhere, people demanded answers. Public outrage and vigil. In London's Trafalgar Square, a vigil drew hundreds. Candles, tears, placards reading, "No more babies left behind." Faith groups, Anglican, Catholic, Muslim, joined in prayer. One imam said, "We must protect every child Allah entrusts to us." Questions flew. Why did it take a toddler's death for action? Political fallout. At Westminster, politicians faced pressure. The Prime Minister called an emergency inquiry. Local MP David Lammy, Haringey, demanded resignations. A parliamentary debate ensued. A minister said, "This was an avoidable tragedy." Lives were ignored. Opposing MPs challenged. "You cut budgets. Now you blame the front lines." The political theater began, and much of it felt like defense, not atonement. Resignations and apologies. Haringey's director of children's services resigned. The social services chief at Barnardos and NSBCC issued public apologies. "We let a child suffer. We are sorry." But critics argue, were these apologies enough? Some said the leadership merely wore the badge of guilt. They weren't held personally accountable. Controversial perspectives. Tabloid justice. Some blamed the narrative for being sensational. Funding versus accountability, public asked. Is this underfunded negligence or sheer incompetence? Media ethics. Was using Baby P dehumanizing or necessary to drive awareness? Even now, families ask, will one tragedy change a system, or will it just become another headline? Faith and moral debate. Church leaders called for institutional reform. A Church of England bishop warned. Protecting children isn't political, it's moral. But critics asked, where were faith communities before tragedy? After the vigil, churches pledged support. Some skeptics said it was too late, all signals of despair. From outrage to action, or is it just optics? England pressed pause and pledged change. But will any of that matter? In our final chapter, we'll examine justice, courts, sentences, and whether this disaster left any lasting legacy. Finally, we reach the courtroom. But when the gavel falls, does justice serve Peter or soothe those left behind? This chapter asks, who truly paid for his death? And did anything really change? The trials begin. In January 2008, Tracy Connolly, Stephen Barker, and Jason Owen stood in the High Court in central London, facing charges related to Peter's death. The atmosphere was heavy. Tracy, the mother, faced manslaughter by gross negligence. Barker, as the violent partner, faced the same. Owen was prosecuted for failing to protect the child and allowing his suffering. In court, victims' advocates representing Peter's memory sat quietly as evidence emerged, medical reports, social worker notes, and somber testimony. Sentencing. The judge, in a sharp and composed voice, delivered the sentencing in May 2008. Tracy Connolly received 5 years and 6 months in prison. Stephen Barker was sentenced to 8 years for manslaughter. Jason Owen got 21 months for allowing the abuse. Outside the court, crowds gathered. Some said the sentences were fair. Others demanded harsher punishment, arguing that even the longest term couldn't match a lost childhood. Moral consequences. Legal justice rarely aligns with moral justice. Here's why this case raised debate. Tracy's culpability. Some saw her as a victim of Barker's dominance, others as complicit in silence. Barker's sentence, 8 years, felt light for some. He avoided murder charges. Owen's leniency, a figure many believed deserved more for his passive role. Church leaders in London spoke out. A Church of England bishop publicly said, "The law delivered a verdict, but society must ask, did we all fail?" Skeptics questioned whether a few years behind bars could change the culture that let Peter die. Systemic change or empty promises. Post-trial reviews included the Serious Case Review, which recommended major reforms in Haringey Council. Fewer caseworker turnovers, clearer escalation protocols, better interagency communication. But public audits years later showed delays in implementation. Budget cuts in 2010 stalled progress. Many frontline workers still reported overwhelm by 2012 to 13. Audience reflection. Let me be clear. Justice felt distant to those who loved Peter, or who should have loved him. A child gone, 3 adults imprisoned, and a system reshuffled. But did anything echo beyond the headlines? This moment asks viewers, is the legal outcome adequate? Does moral responsibility extend beyond jail cells? And what are the children hiding in systems similar to Haringey's? We imagine Peter now, if living, would be 7 in 2013. Possibly in primary school, discovering math, having friends. Instead, memories of a face in a court photo. We confront the truth. Systems punish individuals, but do they evolve? Or do we move from one crisis to another? We began with a child, ended with a sentence. But his story doesn't close here. It echoes in every policy meeting, every council debate, and every tired worker's tired eyes. Did anyone truly change? You decide. Because Peter's truth deserves not just justice, but our ongoing promise to recognize the next child before it's too late.